Thanks, Lynn, and good morning, everyone. Thanks, Lynn, and good morning, everyone. And I can hear you, yes? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Am I right to go?
Yes, yes. Thanks,
Hang
Jenny.
on.
Thank you.
Right, thanks. Good morning, everyone. So Jenny Wilson's my name. I'm the Divisional Commander up in Ballarat and Moorabool, which we call it, but it actually takes in 5 local government areas. So I'm hoping that I'm speaking to people broadly across the people that we serve. So I want to talk about social safety in challenging times, and really for me, looking at the current environment and about how that's changing for us as a policing unit and some of the things that we're actually seeing, and happy to talk about how we may adjust to some of those issues. So for me at present, as a community, it seems that we're very focused on 2 factors that are affecting our social safety. It obviously is COVID-19, which is a health issue, that has lots of implications, as well as our changing economy, both obviously interrelated, one sort of causing the other, but it's had quite a number of impacts on our country and our world and our local communities. And I think that this has really caused it has been creating fear and panic within our community, and it's really unsettled our normal status quo. But I would argue that sort of the changes in our communities go much further than just being about our economy and about responding to a health issue. As community leaders, we're in a very new environment that we're not used to. We haven't worked in before, and we're trying to anticipate what all the consequences will be. In many ways, we are still charting new territory in relation to how to respond to certain issues. So in some ways we can call on other, I suppose, catastrophes. Up in our area, we're very used to having a fire season and a very vibrant one, and have suffered significant fires and emergency management responses and things like that before. Also crime issues, but not really dealing with an issue quite like this before that really permeates across our whole community and has lots of consequences. And for me, my thoughts are that as a community leader, we're really trying to chart a new territory for our current and our future generations, because many of the things that are happening now and the changes that are occurring will impact us for quite a longer period of time. The role of policing in our community is really to make the community safe and also make the community feel safe. And our collective and personal security can be threatened in various ways. So the policing role historically might have been seen about law and order, but also our jobs is also to create and maintain social cohesiveness, civil order, provide public reassurance and give public confidence about going and about their business day to day, and also having confidence in the police themselves that we're here to protect you and to keep the community working together. When there's chaos in these environments, we see certain elements thrive. So I'd give an example that if I'm someone that makes safety masks at the moment in Australia, and I've got a little company, then I'm thriving because I'm getting contracts from governments, and actually in a time where there'll be an economic boom for me if I was running that company. So offenders are very much the same. That when there's chaos, that actually creates an environment for offenders to be able to take advantage of the changes that are taking place, because we're not all acting or focused on those issues around safety and personal protection as we might have always been. Offenders are highly adaptive and they're flexible, whereas traditional law enforcement agencies and society as a whole we're much larger. We change slowly, and our reaction time can take time as well. And I certainly think that technology has also had an impact on that. As well, and so has made those changes much faster for us as well, and that's something that we find quite challenging as a large organisation. So there's three elements. I always talk about there's three elements to a crime if it's going to take place. That's you need an offender, you need a victim, and you need a location. And in our current environment, there are lots of opportunity to exploit the uncertainty in the community, looking at those particular three areas. So for the police, at the moment, it's about the challenge of dealing with what we know and expect, but also dealing with what we don't know and trying to uncover the unknowns at this particular time. So for us, in a way, we've had to adapt local. Yep. Okay. So sorry. Yeah. So policing has had to adapt about what we do, and for me, it's been really challenging. So one of the most obvious ones in the community at the moment is these isolation rules, which are part of actually the Health Act, but they're actually may seem straightforward, but then when everyone starts saying, but what about this, what about that, they're actually quite grey, and they call for different responses and a different understanding. So the police are trying to work their way in how to actually apply these new rules and through issuing of penalty notices. But it's actually a Health Act that we're actually trying to enforce, not the normal law and order acts or crime acts that we're used to doing. So that's, from a workforce perspective, we've actually had to think differently, as has the community also had to adapt and see what's going on. And we can see there's lots of confusion. We've also had to work. We also have to work in different ways to achieve the same objectives, but protect our community, our staff, but also create a safe environment as well. And so we're also have people working from home and have medical issues like that. So we're very reflective, I always say, of what's happening in community also happens in policing as well. Opening up or decreasing the isolation rules. We've now woken up on Tuesday and have 5. We had 4 the day before. That's opening up and creating other challenges for us as well. So we've got to adapt to those and modify our behaviours around that. What was in yesterday is out today, and then we have to adapt to those new challenges as well. And I think we could see some issuing of penalty notices to a mother that was taking their daughter out driving on learner plates was a really good example of how things may have been handled differently by lots of different police in relation to that matter, but the community really turned on the police in relation to that. And so one of the tricky times for us in this environment is that we've got to it's really important that we try and maintain public confidence, because without public's confidence, that gives us the authorising environment for us to actually to go out and manage the community. So it's really important through this time that we try and keep pace with what the community is wanting, and that we are transparent and we're fair in a whole range of things that we're doing, so that we maintain your confidence in that you believe that we know what we're doing, and you've got confidence in how we're actually policing the community. So I just want to talk about, there's a few things that have been highlighted as as coming up as, I think, challenges for us. So the first one really is about the risk at the moment, and we've seen it around the world, as civil unrest. So different sections of the communities will be reacting very differently to the issues around isolation, the impact of unemployment and economic downturn and things like that. So very much on our doorstep on the weekend with protests down in Melbourne, which actually turned violent. We had some members injured. People protesting about no longer wanting the isolation rules to be in place, but to get back to a bit more normality. So we've seen that around the world, but we're not immune to that that civil unrest either. And we also have other groups that will look to take advantage of these sorts of environments, and will have causes that they want to push forward, and so they will likely join up with the civil unrest and try to highlight their issues as well. So that's something, again, another balance between the ideas of the ideas of maintaining public confidence, so people have confidence in what we're doing, but not overreaching and losing that. So there's a fine line always in relation to what we're doing. And because it's a new environment for us, that's, as I said, it gets a bit tricky. Family violence, that continues to be, it continued to be a topic of concern already for us, but at the moment it's been really interesting. We thought we'd get an escalation of family violence. What we've actually seen is reporting's the same, but it's actually shifted. So we're getting more reports of family violence matters for the first time from families, and that's starting to be more about children and parents as opposed to spousal partners and things like that. But we also have a concern about, there are a lot of families that would normally have that, I suppose you'd call it casual surveillance through children attending school, people going to interact with health workers and a whole range of things that would be able to keep an eye on what's happening in people's lives and be able to intervene if they need to. Clearly in isolation, all those sort of normal sort of surveillance things that we have, or linkages into possible family violence victims, aren't there. And so that is also a concern for us, because we sort of wonder what is happening behind those closed doors and what can we do about that. So one of the things that we've done is we have an operation going at the moment where we're going around to existing, where we know we've got existing families that are regularly involved in family violence incidents, and trying to link in with them. We've also noticed there's been an increase in online people asking for online support around family violence as well, so that they can do that quite discreetly on their devices, but not having to actually be quite as overt, which may impact their safety. The other parts for me, I think, is so we've had, certainly I've talked previously going into this about cyber crime. So we've got more people on computers and devices than we've ever had before, and that's really creating an environment for people to take advantage. So we have seen an increase in identity thefts. We've also seen deceptions and scams adjusting and adapting to this environment. So I think we've heard about some scams involving the superannuation system. We've got more people ringing in to people at home and asking for their private particulars and things like that. We've also got, I've got real concerns about pedophiles and activity like that. These people can get into the games and things that children are playing, take on the persona of a 10-year-old, and are very good at it, and that you're really invisible with that. And so it's really important that parents really know what their children are, who they're playing with, and do all those normal checks that you would do if your child was going over to someone else's house to play. That you actually go in there, and you have to have an agreement that you go in and have a look at their computers and who they're linking onto, and have the photograph of the person, like I am now, on the screen, so that you can do those normal checks you do if you're meeting with someone face to face, but you're doing it in this environment. So that's really important. And there's lots of information on child wellbeing sites. That's I know the Alana Madeline Foundation has a lot of information around cybercrime involving children, but you really need to still have that active supervision as a parent around that. The other bit, and then the other bit for me around scams and things, of course, is our elderly people and what they're being told and asked for information like that. They're particularly very vulnerable because they're on the end of a phone and often not a device, and are very confused about all the changes that are going on. I'm also very conscious that so my mum deals in a money economy, not in a card economy, and so how does she adapt to this changing environment of having to pay by card and all that sort of business. So that's and I noticed that the banks have now decided to issue debit cards to all people over 70, I think they've said, to allow them more flexibility. But I think there's also a risk in that about people not knowing how to manage that change in technology that they're being exposed to. So really important if you've got people, you know, if they're family members or neighbours or things like that, that you can actually talk about those things with them, because they'll be getting these letters in the letterbox, and they won't really know what to do with them. And then the other bit for me is around getting those letters in the letterbox, because offenders also realise that if you get a card one day, then you're likely to, or you'll get a PIN card another day. So noticing that your mail's missing is something that's also really important all the time. So then I sort of think, for me, it's sort of trying to then think about increasing our mobility and what's that going to mean for us. So while everyone's been locked down, it's been really interesting watching the road policing and how that's our road trauma and what's been happening. So we've got less cars on the road, and believe it or not, congestion actually helps slow down cars speeding. So we've actually noticed that we've got really high speeds in cars at the moment, and we've also noticed that people have the idea that we're not conducting criminally breath tests or drug testing and things like that, and we still are, and we're getting very high readings of people drinking with a lot of alcohol and drugs in their system, which is really concerning. And one of the bigger issues I think that's been is around trucks and freight movement. So demand is going up for different bits and pieces. So we're seeing more trucks on the road than we've seen probably before. They're not being slowed down in the congestion of traffic, so they're going faster. We've probably got inexperienced drivers who are being brought in to help keep freighting round bits and pieces, because we haven't got common flights going interstate and things like that. So that's a real concern to us about, you know, getting drivers that aren't used to driving long distances or working with freight, drug use in those sort of industries, and fatigue. That's something else that we're sort of having a look at the moment as well. So then we get, we're all allowed to drive our cars and things again, and for us, we haven't done it for quite some time, and we go out, and particularly around our region, but we're coming into winter, so we've got challenges of weather, poor driving conditions, black ice, and those sorts of things coming out. We've probably got less traffic on the road, so people are going faster. So we have an expectation that, you know, that there's a risk that we're going to see road trauma increasing quite significantly if we actually don't adapt to these new conditions that we're driving in, but also realise that we have to slow down and be extra careful. And we're not used to driving. We've got used to not driving for a period of time. Other areas which I think are interesting about different ways of adapting. So there was some literature that came out around drug dealing and how do people adapt. So what we've noticed, that particularly because we've gone on highways, so we've actually had some really good intercepts and catching of drug runners between the different states, because there's not many other cars on the road, so that's been actually a positive. But people are adapting, so lots of drugs we suspect coming through the mail and being delivered through mail, and also in New Zealand they talked about use of bicycles for people to ride around their bikes to deliver drugs at different locations as well. So it just shows you that about that being able to adapt to different sort of environments, and they're very clever at thinking up new ways of doing things. And generally speaking, can afford the technology because of the crimes they do to be ahead, to get ahead and have the latest technology, which is also very challenging as well. Trucks, yeah, I'll talk about that. So I think the other parts for me is I think about what drives crime, and so clearly we're going into a point. I know at Ballarat at the moment we've had a lot of homeless people moved into the city, and I have weekly meetings with the councils and other non-profit organisations around the well-being of the city and the people, and you know, if people are getting fed and do they need food packs and things like that. So what we've noticed is that a lot of homeless people have been moved out of their regular, I suppose, locations, a lot of them out of the parks because they were closed. So that's put a lot of pressure on their local food supplies. And then what we see is that we've got more conflict between homeless people and community members because they're confused, there's mental health challenges going on, their routine's been thrown out. And so these are the sort of changing conditions about what do we do about that. Certainly mental health has been a real issue for us, that we've had increased mental health people referred to the hospital, and I think that certainly in this time of high anxiety, that causes those people that may have had a foolish bucket of issues that they're trying to manage, but has sort of pushed them over the edge in relation to that. So for me, that the important part about is that connectiveness and with the community, and something that we talk about at Compassionate Ballarat a lot, about how are you connecting with the people in your community, whether it's your neighbours, your friends, people that you don't know. It's a really good opportunity. I notice when I go walking, everybody is saying hello at the moment. It's like no one's got to talk for a month, so everyone wants to stop for a chat. But I often think about people when they walk past me and think, I wonder if anyone has said anything to you today, and particularly about our homeless people, that, how long ago is it that they've actually held a conversation, had someone ask after them, or someone do something, a gesture towards them. And I think there's lots of opportunities for us to be able to do that at this time as well. So we've obviously got the unemployment, and we've had some issues down at Centrelink in Ballarat, which is the main hub for our region, with people lining up for unemployment benefits and things like that. And really are in a new environment where they probably have never not been able to pay their bills before, and now thrown in a situation where, particularly if they live from pay to pay, that they've lost their job and they now are not able to pay their rent. So very conscious about that, and have spoken to support agencies around how we can support people in those environments. But again, it's just about being aware of what does that actually mean for us. In relation to food, we've had a number of had some thefts, and certainly in the Melbourne area around theft of light and easy packages being left, and food packages that have been ordered and left on the front step that have been stolen. And I think that's indicative really of some desperate times for people who are really hungry. And so it's really important that we link those people into the councils. There is supplies of food packages for people. We just need to make sure that we link them into the right areas to do that. And all the local councils in across the division have got food packs available for people if they're in that spot at the moment. Yeah, and then I think the other part to me going forward is just about what is the long-term poverty issues for our town, and what will that actually mean. And then conversely, how can we all help in helping push the economy along? And I think that really does come back to the old adage of buying locally and using local services where we can, and all those sorts of things to try and encourage people to come back and open their businesses up at the right times. Yeah, make sure that we're supporting those people, and there'll probably have to be a shift for us from going shopping online to actually going back and shopping in shops when it's safe to do so as well. Of course, I haven't really talked so much about the conditions, and I can say history tells us that every pandemic that we've had ever in the world, there's always been a second wave come through. I think that we're in a really good spot in relation to being prepared in relation to that, and I think our response so far has been really positive, and I think our community's response has been positive as well with helping each other. We've had very low rates of any issues regionally, and I think that but we can't get complacent now. We need to just hold firm, and I think trust the Premier, who with their step-by-step approach about returning to sort of normal business. But we should expect that we're testing more people all the time, and we will get uncover more people that are infected, and that yeah, so I think that's really important too. So I suppose the question sort of I have back to the group, I don't know if we're up to that yet, but the question I posed is I was really interested in knowing what sort of leadership, what does the community need from its police at this time, and what community leadership is required to see us through this crisis? Because, as I said, this is all new to me and new to many of our community leaders, and I'd really be interested in how or listen to what you've got to ask and how we can help. It's very important. Well, I think that, yeah, sorry, I think the, so I think that that's about really policing and in a different environment around the health regulations, really, and about how do we do that in a fair and transparent way, balancing the safety of the community and also being fair to those people that you're dealing with, really. So I think that trying to get that through to people, I think that's a different mindset than what we've actually, our regular members have had with the regular work that they do. So I think that's really important. I also think at these times that sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. I also think at these times that we need to really show compassion. So an understanding in some situations that people get themselves into, trying to sort of reach in behind that, and because we're a touch point, we're actually a really good gateway into lots of support services. So making sure that we follow up and look for opportunities that we can help people to bring link them into the support they need. And I've just seen a chat from Sam Luxembourg, and he's absolutely right that that positive things happen in these sort of situations as well. And we're certainly seeing that in the crisis, some of our people, or lots of our people are standing up and showing leadership where probably they may not have before, but they're actually responding well. Mm. So I probably can't talk specifically about people living dementia, but I expect that what we'll see is that we're called to more situations, probably at a crisis point, where people that have been in isolation and probably people that may have been living okay by themselves or with a helper, just with the levels of anxiety and confusion, certainly will be needing more assistance. So again, that's where I say that it's good to know the people around you and reaching outside your circle and to the people that have changed their daily patterns that you can actually see, and just knocking on the door and seeing if they're all right. And if they're not all right, certainly contacting the council to see getting some support for them, or ringing us, and so we can actually link them into some support. Yeah.